Welcome to Soul Discovery with Kelly.
And Kelly.
And it's been a while since we've actually done a podcast.
Yeah,
We've,
we've been really busy. I mean,
yeah.
spring and
Well, we taught a
stuff.
workshop series, the Energy Mastery
Yeah.
series, which was three different workshops: the Introduction to Self Mastery,
Yep.
Energy Mastery, and then Creative Energy Mastery,
Yep.
which went well. And
Oh yeah, no,
but
it
that
really
took
did. It
up
was
our
a lot
time
of
and
fun.
attention.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
lot.
and it was good.
Yep.
And we're editing those courses so that they'll be up on the app or the online platform, whichever way you want to
Hmm.
sign up for those. You can download the Passion app onto your smartphone, and then you search Academy of Embodiment Arts and you can sign up for free. We do have free content, but we have a lot of paid content as well if you want to
Mm.
take Qigong or you want to learn Bagua, you want to do things. We're going to be revamping the Bagua, I think we were talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we want
we
to
have to
finish
add a
some of
little
the
bit
yeah,
more. We have to finish some things, and yeah.
and we also want to start building the course for Magui Bagua.
Yes. So we have
So
to
that's
finish the Jang. We are part one of the Jang forms, or not the forms, but the hum changes
yeah, the system. Yeah.
that are up, and we need to finish the other four. And we've designed it in such a way so that there's a lot of content if you're already a Bagua person,
Hmm.
that there's a lot of content that is you can take in between, because some of the what we've done is that we don't open up the next lesson for a week. So you have time to practice the particular palm change, because it's important to practice the conditioning.
Yep.
So if you are already,
It's not just about learning the
it's,
movement.
yeah, not supposed, yeah,
It's the
exactly.
way it changes the body
Hmm.
and how it helps you listen to the body and feel chi actually running in your system.
Yeah. So there's a lot of detail. So if you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, there's a lot of detail. Plus, there's also, if you didn't want to do the exercises the way that we're suggesting, after a week, the next lesson opens, but there's also other content in there that you can open up.
Yep.
So, but we're a little slow going with getting some of those things together. And I think that's probably what we really wanted to talk about in particular, because in the last year, especially, we've had a lot of different things happening, and you and I have chosen to slow down
Yeah.
in creation of the content,
Yeah.
and also teaching classes and taking time to regroup and figure out things,
Hmm.
because we had a major event last year, and then there's been other things with our family. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's been a busy year, but it's very sort of not busy year in different ways. With my dad passing last year in March 6th. Uh, I mean, it's kind of like being on autopilot for most of the first 6 to 8 months after he passed, because there's so much to do,
yeah.
so much to help my mom with,
Hmm.
um, and her grieving process.
Process. Yeah.
You know, let alone my grieving process.
It's been hard.
Yeah, yeah, no, it has been really hard. Um, right now we're sitting on the south deck out of my dad's or my mom and dad's place out in the country.
Yeah.
It's like literally was my dad's favorite place to sit.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, so we're
Which is maybe why we felt prompted to do that.
yeah, because we're
Because
gonna.
we're going to do this inside, but it's such a beautiful evening. It's still a little
Oh yeah, the
cold.
sun's going down and the sky is
Yeah.
beautiful, like pinks and oranges, and the
Yeah.
clouds over out west.
Hmm. Well, and you and I, we haven't really spoken about your dad's passing publicly, except maybe with friends. But I mean, we
Yeah,
were
not
both
really.
here when he
Yeah,
passed.
I mean, and I did that workshop on qigong and grieving, but that was for like a conference in
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
states on qigong.
yeah. And actually, that talk is up on our online platform
Yep, on our app.
for free,
Yep.
actually, and you can access the link there. We'll actually put the link to the online platform in the description for this episode, so you can
Hmm.
check that out. It was a really well done,
Yeah, I got a lot
really
of
well done
I
talk.
got a lot of accolades for it and stuff, and a lot of interest from people. A lot of people appreciated how open I was and candid, and that's one of the things is like I have really have no problem talking about certain things that most people have trouble with, like their grief. Like for me, my practice of meditation and qigong over the years, sort of going on 40 years, some of it.
Yeah.
Um, it was interesting hearing some of the feedback from the conference because I'm just so used to doing stuff and I've been doing stuff for such a long time. I just hadn't thought, how my words would impact people or, you know, how
Mhm.
how amazing my insights were because to me they're just like normal because of I'm so used to being in that space of observation
And how
and
introspective and you
yeah, like
are.
I've always been reflective and introspective like my entire life. Um, it was one of the jokes with my mom, like, constantly telling me jokes about, "Oh, you're so you're learning," when I was a teenager, "Oh, you're learning meditation now, so that means you won't have any trouble whatsoever, like, spending time shopping with me now, right? Because like, I'd go shopping and we'd be I'd help her pick stuff out, but usually I was just there to hold stuff.
Yeah. You're the
Be
official
I'd be like the living
garment holder.
yeah, the official garment holder, and I'd just sort of, like, it's like my mom was like, "How do you, like, put up with me sometimes? Because like, this is, like" after, like, a 3 or 4-hour shopping
That's what breath
run
work is for.
yeah, I'm like, "Well,
Like
it
it.
gives me an opportunity to practice," and I just stand there holding hangers full of clothes and
Yeah.
just practicing my qigong, my standing sake, my dantian breathing, and she's just like, you know and to me, that's normal, right? So I don't have the same perspective as, most people do in terms of the
Mhm.
connection to their body. I'm very, very, very sensitive, very intuitive my
Yeah.
entire life.
Well, and I think there's a common misconception sometimes for people who are spiritual or
Yeah.
considered healers or, any kind of mental health capacity that you work in as a therapist or something is that because you have a toolbox that grief is easy for you to go
Oh,
through.
yeah. Oh my
And I
god.
think
Yeah.
the one thing that I've learned in the last few years because for me, I'm grieving for your dad, even though I didn't know him the same way, but he
Mhm.
did consider me a daughter-in-law. We joked about that.
Yeah.
He's just like, "Well, you're not it's not official, but you are.
Yeah.
You're like that," And it was kind of a little joke between us. But also too, for myself, there's been a lot going on with my family where I have a loved one who had addiction issues, and
Mhm.
it's ongoing, and everybody in the family has had to learn how to work together,
Mhm.
and we've had to learn how to and this is extended family, by the
Yeah.
way, and we've had to learn how to work together. We've also had to learn, each of us, what our boundaries are sometimes, and sometimes the boundaries different. So,
Mhm.
there's been a grieving process for me in that way as well. And then, I've had some health issues that our medical system is slow. So
Mhm.
I've made sure because I do talk about physical health that I went to the doctor and got tests ordered and stuff like that. And she's been really great, a great support, my new doctor that way.
Mhm.
And, that's kind of, but everything's fine. And, but
Yeah.
there was one, a few weeks ago, it was first triggered, like I had a grief attack. And I actually
Mhm.
wondered if I was having a heart attack at first because
Yep.
of all the emotion that came up. My chest felt like weird. My head was swimming. And I was like,
Mhm.
what's
Mhm.
that? And
Mhm.
for me, it
Mhm.
was just because I had been supporting so many people. And it's not like I hadn't cried or thought about it, but I think there was a lot that happened too with even with my kids, like everybody's moving out, they're all graduated high school, they've got jobs, like there was a lot that was just happening all at once. Excuse me. And I think I've just
That
had a
was it
lot of
was a lot in the space of, like, a
yeah,
month.
yeah, in a month.
Like,
Yeah.
the last month, like, literally right after, like, that one-year anniversary of my dad
Yeah.
passing,
Yeah.
you had all this stuff in your life
Right.
sort of, like, implode and kinda like,
So,
"Oh, alright,
grieving
okay."
itself is a very physical process. It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just crying like and I find for me that crying is the best way
Yeah.
to actually just deal with all of the emotion,
Mhm.
letting it out and not letting my mind get stuck on things,
Yeah.
but just being able to let it out. And so I've had a couple of when I think I had the second grief attack, it was like, "Oh, this isn't a panic attack. This is something else. And I've had panic attacks like, oh gosh, what, 30 years ago when I was in my early 20s.
Right.
So it feels very similar, but
Hmm.
it's not
Oh,
quite the
they
same.
do, they do. Like I remember um, when I was a kid, and I'd have panic attacks. Like when my asthma, when I was first getting used to my asthma and dealing with my asthma as a kid, and I would, have a panic attack about having an potentially having an asthma attack,
Mm,
that would
right.
then cause me to kind of have an asthma attack, and then I'd have to deal with that. I mean, the main difference in my life, um, has really been understanding that I can listen to my body.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Qigong is. That I mean, I have this unique sort of thing in my life where when I was 8 or 9 months old, in between 8 or 9 months old, and I lost the fingertips of my index and middle finger on my right hand. So I spent literally up until I was like 23 or 24 with those fingertips cracking and bleeding every season. Summer, it'd be too hot and dry. Winter, it'd be too cold.
I bet you growth spurts too.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I
God,
just
yeah,
thought
my
about that, right?
growth spurts
Because you're
too.
just because you don't have the tips of your fingers, but your hands are still
Yes,
growing, like your bones are
yeah,
growing.
and you can actually tell because like
Yeah.
my index finger's got like a little dome on it,
Yeah.
where
It looks like it's
where
regrowing the finger.
yeah, because there's
Yeah.
still like it's like there's no fingernail or anything like that on either finger, but both of them kind of got little bulges where from my bone and my tissues growing in my fingers still as I've grown into being an adult. Um, so the punchline with my fingertips is that growing up in my entire life, and one of the reasons why I have such incredible stillness and internal discipline is because anytime I would lose track of my body, as in when I stopped becoming aware of my body, I would invariably, every single time, smash my fingers one way or another. And I know, and over the years, I've come to understand that this would always happen whenever I was being projected at heavily, or whenever I would get wrapped up in something emotional, and I would get, wrapped up in my anger, hijacked by my ego and my shadow, or hijacked by someone else's drama or some situation going on around me. And the number of times where I smashed my fingers, going in like at school where I couldn't yell or scream, and I had to internalize the pain and the anger and the frustration and not take it out on people around me, and to just let it move through me, let the anger and the frustration move through me. um, was it has had a profound effect on my mental, emotional, and spiritual awakening and development, because like literally before I was a year old, I had to deal with immense pain, constant, profound, immense pain. Like my mom and dad would have to change my bandages like 4 or 5 times a day.
Mm,
There was like so much blood all the time,
mm,
and that I remember those. I mean, vaguely, not as clearly as I used to like 15 or 20 years ago.
mm.
But oh my God, I like I remember there was, are those coyotes?
I don't know. We're out here, and I don't know if you guys can hear them on with the microphones because the microphones pick up voice mostly.
Yep.
But if you're hearing howling, and they seem quite close,
Wow. Okay.
so
Well, they
interesting.
might be on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
Um.
hmm
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
coyotes. Holy
Yeah.
smokes!
Wow.
Wow, we have
We got
coyotes
some
now.
wildlife close
Wow,
by.
freaking out. So the punchline, to get back to my fingers, is that anytime I would lose track of being physically present, being present,
hmm
anytime I lost track of that, I would hurt my fingers. And like my entire life up until like my mid 20s. And I actually in my mid 20s, I started doing iron palm training and conditioning, which was really painful at first because it involved doing the traditional, bucket of mung beans and pushing your fingers down into the mung beans to strengthen your fingers. And this is like on the flat of my fingertips, which hurt. And the first couple times I did iron palm training, my fingers bled, and I had to wear bandages while I did the training because it just hurt. And I mean, I still did the training. I'm just so used to the pain. So, um, what I'm saying is like my fingers have been like a built-in reset button anytime I'd get hijacked by shadow or ego. And this has been a rather fascinating experience the last year, grieving for my dad passing, where my fingertips don't hurt when I bash them, but I have noticed where I get lost in thought or lost in my grief, and I would scrape my fingers, or I'd like, I would hurt them somehow. And I went, oh, so this is, one of the things also in the last year where, nope, okay, this was like, I've talked about this, but this is repeating itself
Yeah,
again. So I'm like,
interesting. Yeah.
interesting, interesting. And you're right about like a grief attack. Like I think it's really important for people to understand how physical grief really is. It's very similar to depression, so people can feel like they're depressed all of a sudden when they never have been.
Well, that's what I was saying to you a few weeks ago, is where I felt depressed. And I've had depression.
Mm,
I had postpartum depression with all of my kids in different ways. I was actually explaining this to somebody the other day, how with postpartum, every postpartum with four kids, each one was different.
right.
Each one made me feel different. Each one had a different way that it came about.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, when a couple weeks ago, when I was experiencing this almost depression like state, I didn't feel excited about life. I didn't feel anything, and I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden, after a couple weeks, then it just started
Right.
really coming out
Right.
where I cried
Yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
where it was like I spent a few days where it was just,
Yeah. I remember that.
I cried, and that most of my day would be taken up crying. And,
Mhm, mhm.
I'm fortunate that I'm at a place in my life where I can space out my work. I can choose what I'm doing at certain times. So I'm fortunate that I have this space to grieve. And I think there's also a misconception with people that grief has a time limit.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
don't think it does because, I've had clients even ask me, well, it's been so many years. Why am I still sad? I'm like, because you loved. Because you
Mhm.
loved and you loved
Yeah.
something well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because there's
grief,
a genuine connection.
yeah, grief is something that I think shows you where you've been passionate about. It shows you where you still have healing to do. It shows you a lot of things.
Oh, it
It
really
shows you what
does.
you're holding on to still
Yeah.
and whether or not you want to continue to hold on to it or let it go. And it'll hit you when you don't expect it.
Yeah, the thing that
It
I
doesn't matter how spiritual you
Oh,
are.
no, no, no. Oh, no, yeah, yeah, well, this is one of the things about, energy and motion is that when you have the space, when you have the space in your body's relaxed, and you've gotten into a mental, emotional, physical space of being relaxed or okay, acceptance, right? That space of acceptance. Okay, this has happened, and you've gone through the process of the grieving process, intellectually. So you've gotten to a place of actual acceptance, and that's when you really start moving through the grief. And that is one of the things that I realized, like, the first few months is like, yeah, I cried, but I just like I hadn't quite sort of accepted it. I mean, also because I'm medium and my dad's on the other side, like talking my ear off.
Well, we talked to him as he
Ye-
crossed over.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
both of us,
yeah.
we were in
That which
contact
was
with him when he crossed over.
Yeah, that moment when he crossed over, like, so everybody who's listening, it's like, Kelly and I were both clairvoyant, we're both, intuitives, and I've been a natural medium and psychic and channel my entire life. And I'd sort of like put a lot of those skill sets and or awareness or interaction with them on hold for a long time, partly because I was, married to someone who didn't support that space very, in a healthy way, and it wasn't easy being around some of the people in pain that I've had to work with, whether they're youth or adults, some of the community work that I've done. So, I put a lot of that on hold. But when dad passed and like we're both sitting there, it's like I remember looking across the room at you when dad unanchored from his body and like seeing your eyes like bugging out of your head, and you're like mouthing stuff at me and pointing. I'm just like like did this, and you
It's
like
re
nodded at
yeah,
me
and we
because he
were
was like
like,
right behind,
yeah, we
right
were like,
beside me.
we're
It was
both
like
feeling and
he was
seeing
like,
the same
okay, yeah,
thing, and I remember even asking him, like, "Are you sure you don't wanna
yeah,
stay? Are you sure you don't wanna come back?" And he was like what he said to me was, "W well, that body's in pain,"
yeah,
and he didn't want to.
yeah,
And
yeah. He
I
was, yeah.
understood that,
Oh yeah,
and
no,
it did but it doesn't make it any less sad.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's like even knowing that he's on the other side, it's like he was. Like I think it was so hard. Like he would choose, because he's on the other side. He doesn't connect to linear time the way that we do. So he'd pop in at the weirdest times, like in
Yeah,
the
that's
shower and
true.
like talk me ear off. It's like, hey, blah blah blah. Did you know this? And
Yeah,
I'm like, Dad,
I'm having a shower.
we're having a shower. He's like, you give me 5 minutes. He's like,
Yeah.
he'd be like, oh
And then you
okay,
kind of,
and
like,
then he
hover and wait, and
and
then you're
wait.
like, "Okay,"
It's
like,
like
yeah,
fine, okay, all
yeah,
right.
yeah.
But yeah, like that's the thing. Like when you're on the other side, it's like there's a lot of misunderstanding right now about what happens when people pass over, and I can tell everyone unequivocally that when you pass over, you reconnect with source, unless you are not of the light,
It
and
was
then you don't.
very, um I don't even know how to describe it, but it was such a wonderful thing to feel how he's grown on the
Oh
other
my god!
side,
Oh yeah, that's the other
because
thing. Yeah,
he's not the same.
well, he's not in pain. He's not.
Yeah.
He's not as
But how
old
you
ramp of
grow
who he
because
was.
you're not in this body, but you're still
Hmm hmm
here,
hmm
but your spirit grows, you reconnect with your higher self, and you grow, and that growth is hard to explain, but we felt it in him.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
it was almost immediate, and now we're actually talking about him long enough. He's actually started to sort of like come closer.
Oh, well, so you're
And it's
okay,
interesting because
yeah.
I can feel who he is,
Mhm.
and I can feel that aspect of himself that had embodied and shaped himself into who my dad was.
Huh, yeah.
And he's standing like, on my left. He always
Yep.
stands on my left.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like I can feel the old space of who my dad was or what my dad was in this, embodiment in 3D. And it's still there, but it's such a tiny part of who he is now. Like where he's gone back to his
Mhm.
oversoul or a soul group, and
Yeah,
he's reconnected with that core connection,
yeah.
which is what we're all connected to through our higher selves. And
Well, and it's what if you're here on Earth, you can actually connect to that and bring more of that in, which
exactly,
is embodiment, which we'll
which
do
is embodiment.
another uh, podcast on that in particular. But to bring you more of your energy here, that's how you raise your
That's how
frequency
yeah,
and your
yeah,
vibration.
yeah. You got to condition your body. You got to train your mind and learn how to be in observation so that you
Yeah,
can observe your thoughts,
yeah,
your feelings, and the information, so that you can get to the information underneath all of those stories. And that's how you actually embody. Because when you get to the information underneath all the stories, the only way you get there is if you've stilled your mind through observation, through
yeah,
practice. You can't do it any other way.
yeah,
And I don't care who you are listening. It's like, I know that for a concrete fact.
yeah.
That is just it's physics. It's physics. The way you shift an element, the way you shift a particle, it's physics. You got to change the frequency. You got to change the tune, the wattage, the amplitude. The only way you do that is by getting rid of the barriers in the way. And the barriers in the way are the mental stories, the misalignment of emotions, the ego attachment of our minds projected onto our emotions, projected onto our stories, projected outward at people and everything around us.
Well, that was one of the wonderful things about that day that you had spent with him, was
Oh
that
my God.
you had
Yeah.
helped him shift something huge in his
It
own
was so huge.
consciousness,
Yeah,
and
I didn't want to leave that day, but it was
yeah,
like the weather was getting awful, and it was
yeah,
like the last snowstorm of the winter.
yeah, and we ended up having to
Yeah,
drive through it and come
drive.
back.
Yeah, it's like I got stuck in traffic once I got into the city because the snow was so awful. 3 hours in traffic, and I got
Yeah.
home, and then like
Half hour later,
half
you
hour
and I
later,
were back
we
in
were
the
back in
car.
the car.
Yeah,
You know, I wasn't even home 15 minutes, and my mom called. But yeah, I remember sitting like my dad had this car accident, and we're doing CRA stuff, and we're going through all his financials to just sort of figure out how to file his taxes so that he can get on top of it. And it was a beautiful day with him energetically because it was just him. He None of his Mennoniteness came out, none of his trauma came out, none of his, storytelling even. His storytelling was almost non-existent that day. I was kind of going,
wow.
I know, right? It's like I'm like, are just like, kind of
He
going,
told all the stories.
yeah, it's just like, where's my dad? What have you done with him? Kind of thing. But we just plugged away at all of his financial records for, like, 3, 4 hours, and, I just we just did it,
Yeah.
and I could feel, like, there was a shift in him about at the 2-hour mark where he stopped complaining, because I think he was kinda trying to caretake me and the work that I was doing,
Mm.
and I just kept on going, "No, dad, we just gotta dig through it." We
Yeah.
just and it was a day, like, where there's no resistance even in me because
Right.
of the
Yeah.
family, stories around money and poverty and this, that, and the other thing that I've worked through, and there's no resistance in me to just do stuff, which
Yeah.
felt fantastic. Like, I've been, trying to get to that place with my dad, working on this stuff with my dad, and it was finally there. I was just like, I was happy. I was so excited to be digging through numbers
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I felt like he was happy. He actually got very content. I felt his energy change where he was okay. Like, he was content, he was happy, and he was satisfied with all the progress that we'd made and everything that we were doing. And he was kind of impressed, like, how much time I'd spent just going through stuff. And like, that's the thing, when you don't have resistance in the mind, you don't have that ego attachment or that ego resistance. It's like it's so much easier to get things done, which is like what real flow is supposed to be.
Right.
And it's a physical space that you can feel and you step into, and this is why observation is so important.
Yeah.
So I just kept on observing and redirecting them. It's like, no, dad, we'll just do this, we'll just do that. And at the end of the day, like, I could feel like how happy he was, how impressed he was with our work. And it was such a different feeling in him. I'm going, wow, this is great. I didn't want to leave because it was so amazing feeling how
Yeah.
different my dad felt.
Yeah, because up until that point, you'd kind of been living out here with him
Yeah.
for about 3 months or
Yep.
so, 3 to 4 months,
Yep.
because he was hospitalized. Before that,
Yeah, he
a
he
few
had
months
yeah, he'd had a
before that,
fall.
he'd had a
He'd had a
fall,
fall, and
and so we decided as a family that
yeah, I was just
you
gonna be
you
out
were
here.
gonna be out
Yep,
here, and I made arrangements to come out and visit, sometimes to stay overnight and just be around so that I could see you too,
yeah,
because, you know, for those people that don't know, I mean, Kelly has been his dad's major, like, the caretaker since the accident.
yeah, it was
So
like
your
6 years.
job has been to look after him, which meant,
All the
cooking,
driving, all the
cleaning,
errands,
all the driving,
cooking,
the errands, the
yep,
appointments.
all the appointments.
That
Yeah.
was your main job
Getting them
for the
to and from
last.
physio three times a week for,
Yeah,
like, the first year.
yeah,
It was, like, twice a week, and,
yeah.
fall, like, yeah, like,
So anybody who's been the caretaker of people, like, also the grieving process, part of it is reclaiming your energy because a lot of your energy
oh, yeah.
went into, I mean, psychically, like every day you'd wake up and check in.
Oh, yeah, like, I could
And you
feel my
have to
yeah,
check in
yeah.
because you needed to know what you were feeling. Was it yours or your dad's?
Oh, exactly.
Because you're so closely working with someone.
Well, that blood bond, like, working for my
Yeah,
dad was totally different because I've worked in youth homes, I've worked as,
yeah.
caretaker for my best friend, and it's totally different when it's a family member, when it's, like, you like a parent. And, yeah, this is, like, absolutely exhausting the last few years, and, um
Yeah, and your sleep schedule's been off because you do need to come home and to
yeah.
decompress and things like that. And people don't realize like how much work that can be when you're
Oh,
taking
just
care. Like
decompressing.
anybody who does support work would
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
and you work in a hospital, you're a care aide or something, you'd know.
yep,
But if you don't know,
mhm,
or if you hire someone to do that, then you haven't done it yourself. I mean, for me and my one part of my grieving process is because I've raised 4 children and that's been my main
yeah,
job. And so I've had paid work obviously, but I was the main person who took them again to their appointments, to their activities, to everywhere they need to go, driver's lessons. The last few years that my youngest 2 kids went to school in the city, well, they didn't go on a bus anymore, so
mm,
I had to drive them to school every day. So a
mm,
lot of my time and my energy was focused around, well, what do they need? Do they need help with homework? And then they went too high through a part of their high school through COVID, which just threw everyone for a
pretty
loop.
much everyone.
Everything normal that they would have done as teenagers, they were delayed.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of things going on. And so for me, even as well, to reclaim my energy from all of that, like sometimes I'm still tired. I'm exhausted. And it's actually been scientifically proven now that with mothers who have raised their kids, whether you're working or not, you get to a point, and it's usually around the menopause time, which sometimes can make menopause more difficult,
Mhm.
emotionally or physically, depending on how stressed out your body's been, because we don't get good sleep when you're
Oh,
a
no,
mom.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, dealing with my own things, but I was sometimes a surface sleeper. Like I sleep so deeply now I snore. He laughs. He's laughing right now
Your
because I've never
radar
snored in my life until
your
I
radar,
moved
I'll go up and
in
get
with
some
him.
water, and you'll be, like, sound asleep,
Yep.
chainsawing down forest, and I'll get up, and you immediately stop snoring,
Yeah.
and you surface sleep, and I can tell you're surface sleeping
Yeah.
because your breathing is changes
Different.
completely,
Yep.
and then I come back in, and it's about, like and sometimes depending on how tired you are, it'll be, like, as soon as I get back in the room, you'll start snoring again,
Yes.
or is it, like, as soon as I get back in bed, or I'll have to
Because
sit
I
there.
hear you
Yep,
and I'm like, "Is
yep,
he okay?
yeah, and you'll
He's
ask me, like,
okay."
half asleep, I'm like, eyes
Yeah.
are closed,
Yep.
snoring stops. Are you okay? I'm like, yep, snoring, and like literally next breath, your snoring starts again. I'm just like,
Yeah. And
I'm
that's the
good.
thing, I've never snored in my life, and
Yeah,
Kelly moved in with him.
yeah,
So that just goes to show how relaxed I am
yeah.
around you. Thank you
Which,
so much.
well, you're welcome.
But
I
sometimes he'll have
consider
to
it
poke me because he's like, "Okay, you need to stop snoring, and you're loud." And I'm like, "Really?" But I used to be the quietest little
well,
sleeper.
you're a surface sleeper.
Well, my
You
kids
sleep
would
on your back,
yeah,
and sometimes there are a couple of times where I'm just like,
yeah.
oh, I see what the kids mean. It's like,
Yes.
yeah,
They used
you're
to
so
think I was
quiet.
dead. They would come in my room and they would go, "Is she dead?" Because I slept so quietly.
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, I can hear you. What do you want?"
Yeah, it's just like people who are caretakers, nurses, doctors, I mean, even like friends and family, like when you are involved in a relationship or you have a family member that needs taken care of and,
Or need support
you
in
need
any way. It
support
takes your time and
it
energy.
takes your time and energy and it's like you need time to decompress from that. And that's sort of like one of the things where I'm just like, my energy is slowly starting to come back. But I mean, it's been like 7 years.
Yeah.
It's been 7 years. I'm just like, holy smokes, my guy just like, just take it slow, just use,
Yeah.
this is gonna be a process. And it is like it has been a year, I've been working on trying to figure what'll work for sleep, but right now it's just I gotta let my body do what it needs to do
Yeah.
and actually acknowledge that the decompression time that I need is significant
Yeah.
and to not push myself so I don't burn out completely.
Yes, because you can burn out as a caretaker, but you can also burn out during the grief process
Yep.
because you're trying
Yes.
to be normal
Yes.
when things are not normal
Think
anymore.
yeah, and
Your
it's
normal is gone.
yeah, my normal is gone. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, my normal routine that I had like
Yeah.
years ago is just like
Well, because for me in the last, what, I guess it's been like 6 months maybe, that two of my kids who didn't get their driver's license during high school because of COVID and they couldn't do,
yeah,
driver's ed the regular
classes.
way,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
classes and everything.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you had to hire
we
a
waited
teacher.
and we hired a teacher, and they both got their license in the last 6 months to a year,
Yep.
and then
They got jobs and
jobs,
they're like,
and then they're driving all over to see their girlfriend, and I'm like, "Oh, now I don't have to do that anymore," which is super nice,
yeah,
but also weird.
yeah,
Like, it's
because you're
weird
just like,
because
well, yeah,
it
like,
just felt like it was like, boom, the last 2 kids, it just everything happened at once, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa,
right?
am I ready for this change? I
Yeah,
don't have
yeah,
a choice, but it's
yeah.
here."
I know, right? It's like the universe is
So,
going, well,
yeah.
this is what you sign up for, so here you go. It's like, shut up. It's like, no. As long as there's like chocolate, then
Yeah.
maybe okay.
Yeah, right? Our secret stash.
But yeah, no, grieving has been, when you described your first grief attack and what it was, I'm like, oh, I know what that is.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
know what that is. Because even when I was a kid, I would have those when I'd bash my fingers. So, oh my god, I'd be so angry. And a couple times, it's like, bless my friend Wade because he'd be like, "You okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." It's like, well, if you need to yell or shout, I'll just like I'll watch because it's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny.
Like, because I was a small kid, right?
Oh.
So like I was like small,
So
like
you'd be like,
this
this little
tiny
kid
little
like,
raging blah, yeah, I'd be this tiny little raging little like blonde kid.
Mm.
But
I was a
you know, and
teenage
and
girl.
Wade was like, "Man, you know how to swear really good for
For
in French
something
and
so
English."
small.
For
Yeah.
someone like, wow, the amount of
Yeah.
like curse words coming out. It's like,
Yeah.
but you know, it's like the intensity of the emotion is what's so cleansing. Like when you cry when you're grieving, like you know, anyone who's listening, if you're grieving right now, let yourself cry,
Yeah.
let it out. I have ugly cried so much in the last year.
Yeah.
Um, the only other time that's comparable is when I used to ugly cry like morning and night after my divorce,
Yeah.
after my separation, even because it was just like it had just been so intense emotionally. My
Yeah.
system was just like, no, we are getting this out the door.
Yeah.
It's like we're
Well,
crying.
and another thing too is that what you and I have been able to do for each other, and we've been able to do this because we've really worked on our relationship
Yeah.
to be really solid, is we've actually given each other space and held space for the other person to yell,
Oh yeah.
which can make people feel very uncomfortable
Yep.
because when someone's yelling or they're angry, we automatically, or like our most people's go to is like, oh my God, they're attacking me.
Oh, they're attack. Oh
But
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
one time where I can't even, I don't remember what it was that triggered it, but I can remember us being in the bedroom and I just looked at you and I was just not having it. No, and you gave me space to yell and
Oh,
you
oh
just
yeah, yeah,
remained
yeah,
calm.
yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
explained and I knew what was happening that I needed to do it. But I've also been able to do it for you too, where I stand there and you have vented in
Mhm,
my
mhm.
like to me, not at me, but to me. And I just stand there because you and I both can feel and understand what's behind it.
Yep.
We understand that this is emotion that just needs to move. And I think
And it's
people
not
are
personal.
so,
It's not personal.
yeah, it's not personal. Like you didn't take it personally and I didn't take it
And
personally.
this is
And
this is
that's
this is
part of the thing
one of
is
the
that,
ego
yeah,
things that people get stuck in is when someone is angry or emotional in their space or around them, they take it personally because it's like, well, this is my space. It's like, why are you doing this in my space? It's like, oftentimes it's because the person feels safe
yeah, yeah,
and they trust that person and they trust you and that's why it happens in your space.
yeah,
Whether or not people are conscious of it or not, like
yeah,
that's why people get emotional or like you do, like you have that supportive energy where you know, and I've had this happen to me, like you know, you witnessed it,
yeah,
where it's like people will just like lose their shit around me
yeah,
because they're energetically they know that they're supported
yeah,
and that they'll be understood and it won't be taken personally.
yeah,
That they'll just be given space to feel what they need to feel,
yeah,
and you know that's what I've always just wanted to be able to give people.
yeah. Well, and anger is such an interesting one because it is part of the grief process because often you're angry. Like I can remember being out here at the farm with you during the winter, and I don't know why I went outside, but I did go outside, and I can remember looking up to the stars, and I was actually angry at your dad. And I had a conversation with him
Mm,
because I was angry, at how you were treated sometimes. I was angry at, how some of things were left that they didn't get resolved.
yeah,
And anger is part of the grieving process because things can be unfinished,
yeah,
whether it's actual physical projects or it's just
yeah,
emotionally being able to share something or tying, up loose ends or whatever. Like
yeah,
sometimes
mm,
those things are left undone.
yeah,
And you can be angry about that.
oh
And
yeah,
sometimes you're
absolutely,
you're angry
absolutely,
about them just passing in general. Like people can be angry if it's really sudden.
yeah,
And sometimes we don't know how to go on without them. That makes us angry. And we need to be able to express that.
mhm,
And I mean, you and I, one of our specialties in healing, which we don't get to do often, but we would love to do more of it,
mhm,
is we actually hold space for people to be angry.
yeah,
We've done that with people where they will come to us and they'll be just angry about something and they vent and we just stand there and listen. And then we say, "Do you feel better now?" Because you got to let that energy move because
yeah,
when it builds up, what happens is then you take it out on someone.
yeah.
And that's the real issue with anger is when you're taking it out on someone. You and I know how to yell at each other without actually taking it out on the other
But
person.
we don't project.
But we don't project.
Like that one
Like
time,
that's
I don't
yeah.
know, about it's a little over a year ago before my dad passed. Actually, I guess it was a couple of years ago now. Wow, holy crap, holy smokes! Where we yelled at each other,
No, your dad had already passed by then.
Oh, had he?
Yes, I think he
Really?
had. Yeah, I think so.
So it was the summer then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that day it was kind of interesting because we yelled
I
at
don't
each other.
know.
We got
There's a
really,
lot
really
of
angry.
stuff.
I
Yeah.
know that one moment where I was like sitting in the sunroom and
Yeah, no, I
after
remember
I
which
yelled at you
moment
in
you're
the kitchen,
talking
and you
about.
came to
Yeah.
yell at me in the sunroom,
Yeah.
and then we were both standing there going,
Huh.
like,
It's
how do
almost unsatisfying because nobody's upset.
you yeah, I know. It was like, well, how do you feel? It's like, well,
Yeah, because then
I'm
afterwards,
fine.
when we were done, yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
I'm fine.
Keep
It's like,
going.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it wasn't personal. It
No,
wasn't, we didn't attack each other personally.
no.
Even though we had some issue about, a certain sequence of events that day.
Yeah, well, and we'd had an issue. The issue really was because the person that I was referring to before with addictions problems, that you wanted to handle it a certain way, and I didn't know if I could.
Yeah.
And we had to allow for each other to have our feelings because you have your feelings about it too, because you're watching me go through it and you're watching me support
Yep.
someone in the best way that I
Yep.
can, and it wasn't working.
Yep.
And it was just you had your frustrations,
Mhm.
and that was the thing, is I allowed you to have your frustrations because I knew that it would be selfish of me to think that my feelings were the only feelings that are valid.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
had feelings that were valid too, and you're allowed to express them because you have your own frustrations about the situation that are different than mine. And
Yeah.
when I think people can allow for that, that's where people get angry and they get stuck, is because they don't allow for
Yeah.
the other person to go, well, I'm angry, but they can be angry too, because everyone has feelings about this.
And it's important to understand, like, especially when you're grieving and you get triggered to be angry. It's not about the anger. The anger is just the energy coming out. It's
It's the
the
energy. Yeah,
agitation in
absolutely.
your nervous system that has been stuck, that has not had space to be expressed, and it's the information after the fact,
Yeah.
after you're angry, which is why sometimes people get angry, they blow up, and then they immediately regret it because once they blow up and they get it out of their system, they realize why.
Because you just needed to let it go.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
But it also depends how you like. I mean, basically, if anyone else had been listening to that, because some of our kids had listened to that, and the boys in particular actually understood,
Yep.
because we talked to people after and they were like, no, we could tell that you weren't blaming each other, you just needed to get it out.
Yep.
And I was like, oh good, you understood, because that
Yep.
wasn't the intention, wasn't to hurt each
No,
other,
no. It's just
but
like, what the heck?
it was but it felt good to express it loudly.
Yeah,
Like,
you're
the
actually really cute when he got mad because I'm like, there's this little tiny
I
ball of
yeah, talk
anger.
about someone tiny and cute who's
I just I it
who's
was just
upset.
and I was just like kind of going the
Amusing.
juxtaposition, like how big your anger was energetically, and then you're
Yeah,
standing there
and I'm so small.
and
Yeah.
you're so small. I'm going. Part of me was like, okay, I got to
I
keep a
have
straight face. This is really important, and
yeah.
what she's saying is really important. But I'm also like the juxtaposition of like how big your energy was versus like how small you are
I'm a
physically.
small person, but I have big feelings.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but what
Yeah.
you were saying, yeah,
Yeah.
like the boys
Yeah.
understood. The boys got it
Yeah.
because I mean, well, we talked to them an awful. I've talked to them an awful lot,
Yeah.
and they understand the context. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the times, like and they know that I don't get angry unless there's something that needs to be said.
Yeah.
It's so rare for me to get angry or even voice it.
Mhm.
But yeah, like that day when we just both let
Yeah.
ourselves be angry at each other
Mhm.
in each other's
Yeah.
space, and then afterwards we're like, "Are you still angry?" He's like, "Well, no."
No, there's nothing
Because
left.
there's yeah, like and see this is the thing, when you don't have ego attachment to the emotion, that's how you let it go.
Yeah.
You don't try and push yourself to let it go, because if you try and push yourself to let go of something,
Mhm.
you're gonna cause yourself stress.
Well, that's why I always think anger is such a misunderstood emotion,
Oh,
because
it really
for
is.
years I tried to suppress it
Yep,
because I didn't like how it made me feel.
yep.
And I didn't have good points of reference for anyone dealing with anger in a healthy way when I
Yeah,
grew
right.
up.
Whoa.
And when I was married, we did not deal with our anger in a healthy way.
Yep.
We really projected at each other, took it out on each other. I mean, it's partly why we got divorced, because we
Mhm.
were just teaching our kids like how
Oh,
to not deal with it.
yeah.
And people were, but in the last couple of months, I've actually held space for other people's anger to actually be angry and to yell to me,
Mhm.
not at me, but to me. And then I would look at them after they're done and I'm like, do you feel better now? And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, see, this is what I mean. Letting it out loudly is cathartic.
Well, and even like,
That's
oh
why
yeah,
when my kids were
absolutely.
growing up and they were angry, I'm like, okay, you cannot take it out on your sister or your brother, but you have a pillow in your room. Go scream into your
Yep.
pillow. Go pound your pillow. Throw your
Yeah,
stuffed
yeah, yeah,
animals
yeah. Oh,
around.
exactly,
And my
exactly.
kids would do that.
Yeah.
And then when they got it out, they would come back and when we talk about it.
Oh, I know, which is great. Like when you told me like that's one of the things that you did with your kids, I'm like, that's awesome because that's a literal effective methodology from Gestalt psychotherapy.
But then we also think when we get to be adults that that doesn't work. And
Or
I'm
it's not
like,
relevant
or
anymore.
it's not
Or
relevant,
it's not
or
what an
that it's
adult
not
does. I'm
mature.
like,
And I'm like, hey, you know what? A good fucking oh, sorry. I guess maybe I should.
beep 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 beep.
I'll I'll delete that maybe.
Good Farmer
A
Brown
good
episode
a
of
good but a good scream is
yeah, yeah.
actually very cathartic.
Well, see, and see,
Just letting out
right,
frustration.
and see, one of the things like I grew up like God bless my mom and dad because they both supported like my brother and I going out and venting our emotions out in the bush,
Yeah,
go and break stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
like I remember the first time it's like, oh, you're okay, like if we go like break stuff. It's like, well, don't break the sheds or any tools or anything like that, but just go and find a rock or a
yeah,
or an old tree, a rotten tree, and push it over, break it up. I was like, oh, okay. And of course, I got older and I could like use a sledgehammer. Then my dad would like get me to like break up like old foundations and stuff around the farm. It's like, here, I'd be talking to him like be like angry or like really emotional about something. He's like, you know where the sledgehammer is and the wrecking bar. Go
yeah,
find something to break. I'm like,
yeah,
okay. And then I'd be like, come back and I'd be like, great. It's like, oh, awesome. But that's yeah, like it is being able to physically emote, being able to physically move through and let yourself move through the deep emotions is so important. It's so important to understand.
yeah.
And I don't feel that people understand that enough
Hmm.
because there is nothing strong about building up rage or deep-seated emotional content and bottling up.
Yeah.
It takes more courage to face it and let yourself feel it and to accept it and to let it move through you.
Well, and I think part of that is that as we get to be adults, we think that in order to be a good person,
Yeah.
we cannot express this, we cannot show this,
Yep.
we can't whatever. And it's like,
Yep.
why? It's just an emotion.
Yeah.
Those kind of emotions, like, we still talk about emotions in terms of good and bad, and none of
Oh,
them
that's
are
right.
bad.
No,
It's just feeling.
it's just
And
energy
it's
and information.
energy and information. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
And
energy
that's
and
what we
information.
teach in our workshops. And maybe we'll have to figure out how to do a workshop where people want to want
We
to
could do a Gestalt workshop where we give people pillows and going, okay, take your pillow, scream into it.
yeah.
Because this is also a martial arts thing.
Ah,
There's
okay.
actually close quarters combat training where you need to get used to your emotions and the intensity of emotions. Because in combat, when you get jumped by people on the street, it is literally close quarters combat, which is why, like in the army and basic training, they like, what's your battle face? Show me how you scream. That's why they do it. It's very simple, actual healthy psychology. But the Gestalt method is like, yeah, you take a pillow, you scream into it, you let yourself feel the rawness of feeling and expressing that feeling, and let it take you wherever you need to go.
Right.
And yeah, we could just do that. It's like pillow workshop. What's that? It's like we're gonna learn how to
Pillow.
scream today. It's like what? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm comfortable. And that's the thing. Like I have some people in my life where I really wish I've been able to, get through to them, and communicate some of this because I've known it for such a long time. Um, but it's just like, my own stories of like not knowing, whether it's safe. And as soon as I like start broaching the subject or having a real conversation with them, or, they run or they change the subject or they hijack the conversation, make it about them and their thing so that they don't have to listen to you.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, okay, we're not ready to go there. But But yeah, no, we can just like do a Gestalt a pillow screaming therapy
Therapy.
workshop
Yeah.
because it is
Yeah.
really effective, and that's like one of the things. Like again, I am so grateful that my mom and dad were so open minded about trying to figure out how to support the kids and being healthy emotionally. like not just being intellectuals and having like really good analytical skills, but my mom especially because she did a lot more uh, reading and research on the subject
Yeah.
because she had stuff in her own family that she wanted to figure out. So I grew up with like books on the
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
on the shelf, and it was just yeah, going out and screaming in the bush. My brother and I would sometimes we come out the back door and we yell all the way to the bush. We just like run away screaming. Just, oh, it's like, and then we like get there. It's like, oh well, I don't know. I feel good now. you
Well,
know?
because you just yeah, like we tend to, I think, as adults, we're always telling kids like, not to feel that, and we or to,
Well,
oh,
be good,
don't be
be
like
good.
this, or
Don't be like
be
this. Be
good,
like
don't
this.
do that.
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah.
we don't teach them how to just because a lot of the things that kids do, young kids especially, are self-regulators. It's a
Oh,
self-regulation
all the
thing.
physical stuff, the yelling,
The
the
stomping the
stamping, yeah,
feet, hitting your hands on something,
right,
sticking your tongue
right.
out. It's all actually, it activates the vagus nerves, it gets you grounded,
And some of it is straight
and
up
it's
EMDR,
self-regulation. Yeah, yeah,
where like when they're shaking their head side to side and like looking, that's
yeah.
like literally regulating the blood flow
Regulate.
in the
Yeah.
brain.
We actually
Or
have very natural mechanisms to
we really,
self-regulate
really
that
do.
we
Yeah.
we kind of squish out of people.
Nope. Well,
So think
and we
about
don't
that.
we don't teach kids how to have options.
Yeah.
And honestly,
That they
that
have an option.
that is
Yeah.
actually one of the things my mom and dad both did with my brother and I. It's like, okay, this is option A, option B, option C, option D. Which one do you want to do? Or do you want to do all of them?
Yeah.
Or and see
Well,
how
that's
far you get.
what you and I teach in our classes is that we don't just have
There's not just one way.
these responses. You can actually retrain yourself to have different responses
Yeah,
physically
yeah,
and,
yeah.
emotionally, subconsciously. It all works on the subconscious level.
It really does. It
So
really
we've
does.
been talking for almost an hour, so I guess we
Holy
should
smokes.
let's wrap it up. Because
Okay.
usually we've been trying to keep these to about a half hour, but I guess we had a lot to say this time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So we'll talk about embodiment next time. But we are going to put links in there. We actually have two more workshops coming up. One is on May the 10th. It is about the rays of creation. We'll be talking about that, the hierarchies of light and the energies that come in with the rays and how you can use them. It's an introductory workshop that we'll be hosting in
Yep.
person and online.
Yep.
And then June 20th, we decided we're going to do something for the summer solstice. We're going to do Qigong that night and a channeled Q&A and
Yeah, if
then
anybody wants to tune in
yeah, if you want
and
to
actually get a
yeah,
some channeled information, ask some questions.
yeah. We
Free.
actually channel quite a few beings, so we're going to figure out how that's going to
Yeah, this
work.
is sort of like this is our first sort of
Yeah.
official kick at the can, if you will, in terms of actually doing channelings for other people specifically.
Yeah, because we do channel when we teach our workshops. We have information that comes in. Sometimes it comes through in a meditation. So we're probably going to be doing a meditation that night too. So mark your calendars, May the 10th and June 20th. And then I'll be doing a talk
Yep.
in May. And then I'm also going to be moving that one to probably a free event, I think, sometime
Hmm.
in the summer on how to talk to the body. Actually,
Actually, talk to your
talk to
body
your body and hear what it has to say.
and listen. Talk
Yeah.
and listen.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us,
Thank you, everybody.
and we will be back soon.
Talk to you soon.